one of the things that surprised me this year is food. I feel like food is high on the school agenda at the moment, talking about cost of free school meals itself. And yes, it's great, I think, that the government is extending access to free school meals from 2026. But we've got this challenge of funding them. And then, of course, and that also then takes us into the realms of sustainability and things. But first, Emma, do you want to explain a bit more about what's the issue with meal funding?
Oh, the issue is meal funding. And when it first sort of hit me, it was that I went into a school and they were getting £2.54, I think it was, in funding for a free school meal. And they were having to pay £3.30 for that same meal. And this was primary school. So they weren't feeding them at other times, because that can sometimes balance out the difference. But that seemed to me to be too much of a strain on their budget. And one of the problems is that LAs are sort of departing from county contracts. So the onus is much more on the independent contractor to try and keep within £2.54 actually isn't very much, even for a reception child's meal. You've got all the staffing, you've got the nutritional standards, you've got a whole sort of back office support of payment and finance and everything that goes with that free school meal. But you're also right about the sustainability angle of food, and I think that is something that's going to come in more and more next year. And I'm going to pass over to Helen now, because she's the expert on this. But it strikes me that pupils down to the very smallest understanding where their food comes from, farming and agriculture, how food is produced, how it works with wildlife conservation, and all of that sort of thing is just as important as that sort of final meal that gets on your plate.
I think, Emma, what concerns me about that example you just gave about that school and the gap between what they're being funded and what they're having to pay a contractor for is that there's no incentive then for the school to encourage uptake of free school meals, or to encourage children whose parents haven't yet applied to have free school meals. So it really worries me that the whole system there is geared against these most vulnerable children and their families, and that really saddens me. And I don't think that it's not as straightforward as saying there's a good guy and a bad guy in all of this, because also the catering companies, I wouldn't say they're making loads of money. They have to cover their costs. Like you said, there's staffing, there's training, there's compliance, there's a whole host of things that we need them to do. And then on top of that, what I have seen quite a lot of in schools is the enormous food waste. So we might be paying £3, whatever you said it was, per meal for this child to eat a free school meal. And then in actual fact, we're throwing quite a lot of that away, food waste. And that's either because there's quite a lot of production waste, plate waste, the child doesn't like what's on the menu or wants to be outside playing with their friends. Or, we've just done ordering incorrectly and we've got counter waste. So there's like this whole issue around efficiency and effectiveness around free school meals, but also school meals generally. And obviously there's a sustainability part of it. And I could talk about that there's menu choices that you could make about taking red meat off the menu and replacing with more vegetables and pulses and maybe occasionally chicken. And obviously there's got to be fish. So there are menu discussions that could happen. And maybe in a school that finds themselves they've got a high number of children that are entitled to free school meals, but the uptake is low, they might need to have a conversation with those children and actually do some work around the menu. And it could be around maybe how it's labelled, or it could be around how it looks. You have to have some really quite open and honest conversations. The contractors that I've worked with have always wanted to engage. Of course, they want uptake. They want to feed children. They don't want to produce food in a kitchen and then throw it away. They want to feed children. So it might take quite some time to get the right solutions in the right order. But I do think the school's interest to talk to their catering contractor or to talk to their in-house team is really, really important. And then you can start having conversations about reducing food waste, or where your food waste goes, whether it goes to oleo, whether you're composting it, whether your council is processing it correctly. But whatever you do not put it in the general waste bin.
Big thank you to Emma Gray and Helen Burge for their thoughts there on food. For more from the Unbound SBLs, check out the full episode, From Food Waste to Future Proofing, the SBL Year in Review.